can actually appreciate um, how how many paths there actually are. And quite honestly, I've always been impressed and inspired when I think about, you know, Buddha gave 84,000 different teachings. And I find that really inspiring because something is going to land on each of us. You know, something will arise that inspires us, that feels like it gives us guidance and inspiration. So many, many paths to freedom is what I should have titled it. But what I'd like to talk about and focus on today are some of the reflections on death and impermanence. You know, and many times, you know, people will say, well, yeah, that's so dark and gloomy. You know, I don't want to talk about death. But I think Buddha's teachings to us have really allowed us to use the contemplations on death and impermanence as a way of making our life meaningful or more meaningful, or cutting through our illusions and cutting through our delusions. So it's really a path to freedom, and it's really a path that helps us immensely if we take it into our heart. The difficulty with the meditations, and in all the paths, quite honestly, in Buddhism, is that if we just hold a superficial intellectual understanding, it's not enough. It's important, and it's a powerful step in knowing. But as you all know, the real treasure is bringing it deep into our heart, so that our minds change, so that our life changes. You know, it's one of the ways that we can check if our practice is working or not. If it's working, and if we've been bringing it deeper and deeper into our heart, we feel less angst, we feel less anger, we feel less anxiety, we feel less of the deluded minds that get in our way. And if not, if we feel an increase, then I think it's a good barometer for, you know, hunker down and more practice. So it's very clear, isn't it? Like, we know if something's working, we just feel more at ease in the world. We feel more open to others. We feel that compassion is arising, that wisdom is arising. So we can check. We can always check ourselves. We can always check our practice. So I want to give a little background. I'm going to be talking a lot today from this book by Joseph Goldstein called Mindfulness. Beautiful, beautiful book. Subtitle is A Practical Guide to Awakening. And I'm going to read just a little excerpt from this book by Robert Aiken, called Encouraging Words, Zen Buddhist Teachings for Western Students. Both fabulous, fabulous books. But before we get into the reflections on death and impermanence, I think it's helpful to reacquaint, or to acquaint if we haven't heard this teaching before, about what the three marks of existence are. Sometimes you'll hear it as three Dharma seals, because they're absolute cornerstones of Buddha's teachings. And if we contemplate this every day, profound benefit can come. But what the three marks of existence are pointing us towards are actual descriptions of reality. You know, we think this is reality. We think our lived experiences are reality. And it's relatively speaking, and I mean that from a Buddhist concept, the relative, you know, we can function because of relative truth. You know, things function because of relative truths. But we know that there's also absolute truth, which is deeper, more profound way of understanding and perceiving reality that is actually complete and total liberation from samsara. I'll talk a little bit about samsara later. So the three marks of existence are, in all of Buddha's practices, all genuine practices of Buddha have the three marks of existence. So the first mark, which is really what we're going to be focusing on this morning, is impermanence, or anicca. And basically, it's the truth that everything that arises also passes away. Everything, no exception, no exception. Everything dies. Samsara is the experience of denying this truth. So we can think that's why we suffer, right? We're denying a profound truth. So we suffer. We stumble, we suffer, we fall. Impermanence is profound. Generally, we don't have to argue, is that true? We know this is true. We know it's true intellectually. So our task as meditators, as Buddhist practitioners, is to try to bring the teaching more deeply into our heart so that it affects our life, affects our day-to-day interactions with others, interactions with self. So, and we can check if this is true. Nothing remains the same, not even for a moment. You know, we hold on to things. We don't want things to change necessarily, or we're unhappy if things change, but nothing stays the same. Norman Fisher, a Zen priest and teacher, told about this friend of his who he said in her youth, she studied Zen with this very famous Zen master. And this Zen master always said, it was sort of like this Zen master's mantra, soon dead, soon dead, soon dead. And I was thinking about how, what a wonderful expression that is for us. Soon dead. We're walking out to our car. Soon dead. I had an experience of this, and at the time I didn't really realize just how powerful this teaching was for me. But many, many, many years ago, I was in a very serious car accident and was knocked unconscious, actually. And when I awoke in the emergency room of the local hospital and recognized that I was still alive, there was that relief that I didn't die. But I reflected on what kind of mind did I have right before the accident? Was I angry? Was I feeling sad or regretful? So the reflections on death and impermanence are helping us to adopt more skillful, wholesome, virtuous states of mind all the time. So we know when we carry those minds of compassion, of loving kindness, of generosity, of moral discipline, we feel lighter and better. Not that that's sort of the gain, but it was interesting that how many times have we had close encounters with a tragedy or with a death or with an illness and recovered. And, what were our contemplations like? Or did we have time to contemplate? I know I didn't. The car accident came on suddenly, and I was just aware of, what am I storing in my heart that's more useful than pettiness, than anger, than fear. So impermanence is not just about loss. Impermanence is also about change. So when we say reflections on death and impermanence, we're really trying to grasp that impermanence is what makes everything possible. Emptiness is what makes everything possible. Otherwise, it's impossible. Norman Fisher said that Dogen, kind of our Soto ancestor, said impermanence is our Buddha nature. And if we contemplate cause and effect and we contemplate the passing of time, impermanence is the path. And we can practice in a way that fully appreciates it and lives it. So 3 marks of existence. First one is impermanence. Second mark is suffering or dukkha. And we can understand this on a lot of levels. Of course, there is manifest suffering. So that's the suffering that we all have direct experience of. Illness, sickness, unhappiness, some difficulty, some loss, something that's occurring that's causing us pain, that's causing us suffering. But Buddha said, suffering or dukkha, there's also a very subtle layer of suffering, which is pervasive suffering, which means it's the suffering of not seeing, of seeing things with duality, of seeing things as separate from self. That causes suffering. That suffering is always with us until we cut through the illusion, the delusion of duality, of separateness. But it can also be dissatisfaction or discontent, or, the suffering that creates that layer of unease in our life, in our body, in our mind. So that's the second mark of existence. The third mark is non-self or anatta. And this is the mark that's teaching us that there is no solid, separate sense of self. And this is really difficult to grasp because we feel pretty solid. We feel pretty separate at times or stable. But we recognize, Thich Nhat Hanh calls it interbeing or interdependence, that everything relies on causes and conditions. There is no separate sense of self. We have, for eons, developed this way of thinking, so it feels like the truth. But what the three marks of existence are trying to do is to flip that on its head, so that we begin to see ourselves, our minds, our worlds, others, with a little bit more fluidity, with a little bit more interdependence, or dependent origination, if you will. So if we're truly interested in being free, and I say this because I sometimes surprise myself when I sit down, to meditate, and it'll feel kind of distracted, or I'll get sort of lost in thoughts, and then I'll think, am I interested in liberation? If we're truly interested, we practice. Like one of the sayings is, you practice like your hair's on fire. So, or you practice as if you're sitting in the midst of a house that's burning down. Now is not the time to contemplate making another cup of tea. We want to get out, right? If your house is burning down and you're in the kitchen, you're not thinking, gee, what am I going to make for dinner tonight? We want to get out. And that's what samsara is all about. And that's why there are so many different teachings to take us. They're vehicles, quite honestly. So to be free from samsara, we need to realize directly these truths, not just intellectually. I think we all have intellectual understandings. We have conceptual thinking around them. We can appreciate it on that level, but we've got to continually sink deeper and deeper and deeper. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So in Goldstein's text, he's a Vipassana teacher, and this book on mindfulness is basically one of the earliest discourses of Buddha Shakyamuni. So it's not mindfulness how maybe sort of pop culture thinks about mindfulness, but mindfulness is, the English word mindfulness comes from the Pali word sati, which means to remember. So the functions of mindfulness are always remembering what we're supposed to be doing. If we sit down to meditate, that function of mindfulness, of single pointed attention, is helping us remain on our object, our breath, our koan, some particular object that we might be meditating on. It's also helping us to function, to realize skillful and unskillful states of mind. So Buddha gave a set of instructions on meditation called the Satipatthana Sutra, which are the discourse on the establishing of mindfulness. And he said mindfulness is one of the eightfold path. It's right mindfulness, and of course leads to awakening. And Buddha's definition of mindfulness was pretty straightforward. It really was about continuously remembering the object that you're striving to keep your attention on. So pretty straightforward. Continuously is the buzzword, because we know what it feels like to get carried away in a thought, and then we just come back, not with a lot of judgment, not with a lot of heavy-handed, you know, feeling, but just we're aware, we come back. We're aware, we come back. Recognizing that's the path to liberation. So Buddha also connected mindfulness with being alert, being ardent, having strong intent, experiencing with comprehension, with deeper wisdom. So it's not just bare attention. It's a pathway to wisdom. I'll talk about that in just a minute. So Buddha's practices encourage us to think about the importance of mindfulness as helping us to live very ethically. So if we hold in mind the precepts that we've taken or we're interested in taking, and mindfulness allows us to be alert. Shantideva talked about a mental factor, a function of our mind called guarding alertness, meaning that if we develop our mindfulness, our single-pointed attention, then we have an opportunity to catch more swiftly when we're straying from the path. So rather than sort of getting caught like a tumbleweed, if you think about that image of a tumbleweed where it just kind of goes where the wind takes it, right? It's just kind of going, rolling, rolling, rolling. I don't know about all of you, but I know that feeling firsthand. Where you're just rolling and going and bumping into things and bumping into other things and rolling. But mindfulness, guarding alertness, according to Shantideva, is knowing when we have veered and we just come back. So we're continuously returning. So this discourse is helping us to understand that the term mindfulness gets used so much that sometimes it loses its meaning. And I find it really helpful to go back into Buddha's teachings to reacquaint with what mindfulness actually is and how it helps us develop this pathway in our mind to stay very, very focused. And I'll talk about why that's so important in a minute. But as our focus becomes deeper and deeper and more stable and more continual, it actually becomes a platform for developing wisdom, or the wisdom realizing emptiness. And we know how tough a nut that is to crack. So without a mind that's stable and what many Buddhist teachers call, we need a mind that's stable and useful. Like our minds can be pretty useless at times, right? We can get lost in thought. We can have all sorts of grim thinking. We can just be a total mess. So we want the kind of mind, heart that's stable and useful. So Joseph Goldstein talks about mindfulness, particularly mindfulness on impermanence, as the doorway to insight and awakening. So it's one of our Dharma gates, right? We chant that in our Bodhisattva vows. Many, many Dharma gates. May we recognize them, first of all, and use them as pathways to liberation. So I'd like to read you a poem that he has in here that I just found to be so incredibly beautiful. It's a little long, so please bear with me. But it's an excerpt from this book called The Life of Shabkar. And Shabkar was a wandering Tibetan yogi. And the poem is really about the power of change, a powerful testament to change. Another day, I went for some fresh air to a meadow covered with flowers. While singing and remaining in a state of awareness of the absolute view, I noticed among the profusion of flowers spread out before me, one particular flower waving gently on its long stem and giving out a sweet fragrance. As it swayed from side to side, I heard this song in the rustling of its petals. Listen to me, mountain dweller. I don't want to hurt your feelings, but in fact, you even lack awareness of impermanence and death, let alone any realization of emptiness. That's a pretty harsh teaching from a flower, right? For those with such awareness, outer phenomena all teach impermanence and death. I, the flower, will now give you, the yogi, a bit of helpful advice on death and impermanence. A flower born in a meadow, I enjoy perfect happiness. With my brightly colored petals in full bloom, surrounded by an eager cloud of bees, I dance gaily, swaying gently with the wind. When a fine rain falls, my petals wrap around me. When the sun shines, I open like a smile. Right now, I look well enough, but I won't last long, not at all. Unwelcome frost will dull the vivid colors, till turning brown I wither. Thinking of this, I'm disturbed. Later still, winds, violent and merciless, will tear me apart until I turn to dust. You, hermit, are of the same nature. Surrounded by a host of disciples, you enjoy a fine complexion. Your body of flesh and blood is full of life. When others praise you, you dance with joy. Right now, you look well enough, but you won't last long, not at all. Unhealthy aging will steal away your healthy vigor. Your hair will whiten, and your back will grow bent. When touched by the merciless hands of illness and death, you will leave this world for the next life. Since you, mountain roaming hermit, and I, mountain born flower, are mountain friends, I have offered you these words of good advice. Then the flower fell silent and remained still. In reply, I sang, "O brilliant, exquisite flower, your discourse on impermanence is wonderful indeed. But what shall the two of us do? Is there nothing that can be done?" The flower replied, "Among all the activities of samsara, there is not one that is lasting. Whatever is born will die. Whatever is joined will come apart. Whatever is gathered will disperse. Whatever is high will fall. Having considered this, I resolve not to be attached to these lush meadows. Even now, in the full glory of my display, even as my petals unfold in splendor, you too, while strong and fit, should abandon your clinging. Seek the pure field of freedom, the great serenity." So such a beautiful poem, such beautiful advice, as mountain hermits, right? That right now we look well, but this will pass. So a sustained contemplation of impermanence leads us to a shift in the way that we experience reality. So that's why it's very profound, because it has the capacity to shift the way that we experience reality. So we contemplate what Joseph Goldstein says, we contemplate day in and day out, on the cushion, off the cushion, off the cushion. We contemplate the arising and the passing away of all phenomena. Because there is a beginning, a middle, and an end to our thoughts, to our feelings, sensations in our bodies, outer phenomena. We continuously, that's the key word, continuously contemplate the arising and passing away of all phenomena. So Buddha said, not seeing this, not seeing arising and passing away of phenomena is ignorance. And remember, Buddhist, the Buddhist term of ignorance is not stupidity necessarily. The Buddhist term of ignorance means we see things with separation. We see things with duality. So we're trying to overcome ignorance. We know that ignorance is one of the three poisons, right? Anger, greed, ignorance. We're trying to develop the wisdom to see through duality. So impermanence is the tool to do this. And it makes everything possible because there's nothing fixed and everything's changing. So before we get into a little bit about the process of how to do this, I'd like to talk about 3 levels of mind that we're one in which we're very, very familiar with as meditators, and those of you that were on Sesshin likely touched into the second one, but I'll talk a little bit about how our minds, what some of the different factors, what some of the different functions of mind are. So the first one is what Buddha called consciousness. It's kind of a gross mind. It's pretty much just the simple act of knowing. It's mostly through our senses, and it's not necessarily a reflective mind. Joseph Goldstein called this mind, which I thought was hysterical because I have a dog, but he called it black lab mind, black lab consciousness. Now I have a golden retriever, but if you watch a dog, you see that really all they want to do is sniff, look, eat, sleep, go to the bathroom. I mean, I have days like that. So when we're in gross mind, when our mind that functions most of the time is just this act of consciousness. It's kind of gross. It's not very reflective. So remember, impermanence and our Zazen practice is helping us to train our mind to become stable and useful. So if we're just driven by sense impressions, we get lost in thoughts. We have lots of memories. We make plans. We have a beautiful smell. And we're sort of, the tumbleweed again, driven by our senses. Not necessarily useful mind. So what we're trying to do with our practice is strengthen through the steady continuity of awareness. Now that's key. This is a key word. Steady continuity of awareness. We're building momentum for deeper practice. So it doesn't happen right away, or maybe for some people it does. But over time, we're building momentum. The more that we dedicate ourselves to our sitting practice, to our off the cushion practice, it steadily builds this momentum for insight and for awakening, because we can let our mind settle into what Buddha called non-interfering awareness. When we rely on our senses, those are interfering awarenesses, aren't they? They hit us, we respond to it, and we're off and running. We're trying to allow that, not follow it so strongly or so much. So we just try to be present with what's there. Our Zazen practice is a beautiful, beautiful pathway to do that, to just be present to what's there. As we develop this stability on the cushion, we develop stability off the cushion. So they're very integrated. They're very integrated. Lest we think that one or the other is more important, they're equally important and codependent, I might add. So Joseph Goldstein said, there's a difference between relaxed and casual practice. So he said, casual practice is more or less mindful. Those days you've had on the cushion, where you're sort of like, oh, my back hurts, or I can hardly wait to get up, or what was that pop in my knee? I didn't think that was there before. So casual practice, we're kind of there, but not in a very careful, precise way. So Roshi talks a lot about, you know, precision in shamatha meditation, that we're landing on something with precision. And that's, you know, that's relaxed practice. We're not gripping. We're not strongly feeling the tightness of it, but it's relaxed. It's a caring attention. Isn't that a beautiful way to think about it? That it's a caring attention. But it's with a deep interest to continue coming back to the object of meditation. Because I don't know about all of you, but I've had meditations where, you know, sometimes you follow a train of thought that's particularly enticing. And you're kind of like, oh, I like thinking about this. Or what was that sound? Or what's that smell? And so we don't come back as quickly, or have we developed the deep interest in coming back as soon as we catch that we've wandered. So here to me is the golden nugget of this teaching today. Because when I first read this, I felt like I could just cry, quite honestly. Developing the continual awareness of mindfulness and this relaxed attentiveness, this precision in our meditation practice is a platform for developing wisdom. It's the foundation to develop wisdom. The wisdom that realizes emptiness, the wisdom that realizes true nature of self and others, true nature of world. So you've heard, Roshi referred to Manjushri's sword. So Manjushri is the Buddha of wisdom and has this double-edged sword in his right hand. And it's to cut through, it's to cut you and I, to cut through our duality, to cut through ego-grasping separation. So with wisdom, we need deep wisdom to do this. We need deep wisdom to pierce the reality that we call reality, which in fact is, we're kind of walking in dream states, right? What's real? Awakened state or dream state. So as our mindfulness gets more stable and strong, it's a platform to learn about what we're seeing and experiencing as non-dualistic. So again, it's not enough to just be aware. We need wisdom. We definitely need, and that's the third level of mind is the wisdom mind. So the first one was this sort of gross mind, consciousness driven by senses. The second one is mindfulness, where we're starting to drop in a little bit deeper into subtle awareness. So it's a more refined, subtle mind. And then the third one is a very subtle mind, which is wisdom mind, that can see clearly. It's a spacious mind, isn't it? That can see clearly. It becomes incredibly useful and incredibly stable. So there's a famous refrain in the Satipatthana Sutra that Buddha said, abide contemplating the arising, the passing away, and both the arising and passing away of each object of awareness. So I'll say that again. Abide contemplating the arising, the passing away, and both the arising and passing away of each object of awareness. So with wisdom mind, we deeply, deeply recognize the transitory nature of our bodies, of our life, of others, of our mind itself. So it's a direct experience of perceiving truth, isn't it? It's you can see where it would be quite powerful and I think literally knock us off our cushion. So it's sort of like the metaphor of when we were learning to ride a bike. Do you remember how difficult it was to maintain balance and momentum? You barely could hold on. You fell a lot. You had to get back up. You fell again. You got back up. But at some point, our intention to keep going was so strong, we actually surmounted the obstacle of falling off, maybe getting hurt a little bit, and we built the momentum, and suddenly balance was effortless. That's much like our Zazen practice, isn't it? That's what we're learning. That's what we're learning to experience, the effortless balance and momentum of training our mind, opening our hearts. So Buddha said one of the supreme benefits in contemplating death and impermanence is when the perception of impermanence is developed and cultivated, it eliminates all sensual desire, lust, attachment. It eliminates all ignorance, separation, duality, and uproots the conceit of I am. So let me say this again, because this is the benefit of death and impermanence meditations, reflections, really dedicating ourselves to this practice. When the perception of impermanence is developed, it eliminates. I just got caught by a sense awareness. Sorry. When the perception of impermanence is developed and cultivated, it eliminates all sensual lust, eliminates all ignorance, and uproots the conceit, I am. If that's not a benefit for us to help motivate us, to help understand the profundity of this practice and what is awaiting for each of us as we dedicate strongly to our practice on and off the cushion, it's quite powerful, isn't it, to think, you mean no attachment anymore? I can see directly into the nature of reality, and I'm not so stuck on self. My self-cherishing, my self-preoccupation gets weaker and weaker. Love and compassion for others is stronger and stronger. Powerful, powerful benefit. And sometimes we need to think about the benefits if we're having kind of a lackluster, practice, that we think, oh, well, wait a minute, why am I doing this? Oh, yeah. I can get rid of attachment. I can see directly into the nature of reality, and I don't have to be so selfish and self-absorbed anymore. So it can be very inspiring, quite honestly. So Joseph Goldstein in his book Mindfulness says, what makes this seeing of impermanence so powerful? And how does it eliminate desire, ignorance, and conceit? He said, when we directly experience, when we have a direct experience that everything that arises also passes away, he said, our mind becomes disenchanted, disillusioned, and dispassionate. So when we deeply, deeply contemplate arising and passing away of all phenomena, we can experience disenchantment, disillusionment, and dispassion. And he says, we can kind of get stuck on negative associations to those words, can't we? That we think disenchantment, fairy tales are all about enchantment. There's a magic to enchantment and being, having illusions of some sort. But he said, the real profundity here is that we start to see that these words, disenchantment, disillusionment, and dispassion, have a very deep and close connection to freedom, to liberating our mind. So I'll talk about that, how that functions. So he said, disenchantment is not a gloomy mind. It's not a mind that feels, dull or unhappy. He said, disenchantment is breaking the spell of desire, breaking the spell of grasping at objects, at attachment, at craving. Disenchantment means we're not so interested in following those compulsive cravings, those compulsive minds that are leading us in one direction or the other. He said, we wake up to a fuller reality. We're waking from the spell of delusions. We're waking from the spell of sleep and ignorance to wisdom and wakefulness. He said, and we can observe the power, directly we can observe the power of enchantment when we're caught following some craving, some attachment. Because you know how strong that gets, doesn't it? When you're following something, it's almost as if we get tunnel vision. That's all we can think about. That's all we can see. That's all we want to know is how does this thing, how can I get this thing? How can I have more of it? How can I have it continue? You know, look at any time you look for, you know, for me it happens when, you know, the new iPhones are released. And I think, oh, a shiny new object. Maybe I should get one. You know, mine's a little old. And I heard the new camera takes better pictures, and I'd like to take better pictures. And you know, we can fall down the rabbit hole, right? When lust, that's sensual lust, that's desire, that's craving. When that's full blown, we're in it, right? Our mind isn't interested in compassion. Our mind isn't interested in wisdom realizing emptiness. Our mind is interested in the new iPhone. So all of those minds that we've been cultivating, we fall under the spell of enchantment. So we're trying to, in this contemplation, and remember, the contemplation is the arising and passing away of all phenomena. So we just keep that in our mind, say it to ourselves, bring it to the cushion, bring it off the cushion. Because he said, if we can notice when a desire arises, we will also notice when it stops, because it always goes away. It always leaves. So it's truth of arising and passing away. We experience it directly. He said, and when we're out of craving's grip, when we're no longer falling under enchantment, isn't it a huge relief? Don't we just feel like, phew, that was strong, that was powerful. So that's disenchantment. He said, you know, this contemplation arising and passing away, we're also training to feel disillusioned. So normally, and he said again, it's not discouragement, it's not disappointment. Disillusionment, we sometimes have associations to disillusionment with those words. He said, that's not at all what it is. Again, we're seeing the connection to liberation. How do we do this? Because disillusionment is waking us up to the illusions of life, to the illusions of what we think reality really is, but it's not. So he said, we're not fooled by the illusions of a separate sense of self. We're not fooled any longer. You know, like, I kind of liken it to when you watch magicians and you see sort of the illusions that they create and you think, that's real. It looks real. How did they do it? It looks real. We sort of believe it on some level, right? Is that real? It looks real. So to become disillusioned is to not be fooled by a stable sense of self, not be fooled by a stable sense of other, of body. He said what disillusion, it's sort of, we're backing away from the conceit of I am. Who's who? There is no enduring I, right? Momentary, transitory phenomena, always changing, every moment, every moment, every moment. And then the third one, dispassionate, again, he said, it's not indifference and it's not apathy. So again, it's a connection to liberation, a connection to freedom. And he said, dispassion is developing a mind of equanimity that sees everything with less grasping, less ego, and more compassion. So he said the sustained contemplation of impermanence frees our mind and shifts how we see reality. We can start to see through the illusions that there is some stable, self-centered existence. We can begin to perceive a constant play of change. I love that, a constant play of change. We can see, many levels to train. Externally, nature, we perceive the constant play of change, right? Relationships, constant plays of change. Society, constant play of change. I'm hoping there's going to be a huge play of change come November. Whoops. Didn't mean to slip in politics, but how can we not? But we see like our bodies, our minds, feeling states, everything is in flux. Everything is a constant state of change. So we look for it. We recognize that when we're caught in something, we bring the meditation of arising, passing away of all phenomena, and we just bring that into our awareness. He also said, Joseph Goldstein in the book Mindfulness, that the teachings are everywhere. We don't have to go looking for them. They are everywhere, externally, internally. When we're aware of impermanence, of that mark of existence, and we're dedicated to remembering it, because that's how mindfulness functions, remember, that we're trying to remember it. We don't have to go looking for teachings, we'll get one. And sometimes we'll get a really strong, fierce one. The car accident I was in was a really strong, fierce teaching. Maybe we've lost someone very dear to us. That's a really fierce teaching, isn't it? Maybe we've lost a state of health or wellness. That's a really strong and fierce teaching. But those are the teachings. That's, Buddha gave the 84,000 teachings according to our capacities, according to our temperament, according to our wish to deepen these states of mind, to open our heart. So we just recognize nothing permanent, everything impermanent. Joseph Goldstein said our new mantra can be anything can happen anytime. Anything can happen anytime, right? That's true. Anything can happen anytime. So remember, we're trying to move beyond intellectual thought, conceptual thought about this. We're trying to deeply, deeply experience it through our practice of mindfulness, through our practice of Zazen. Throughout the day, thinking about the arising and passing away of all phenomena. Laura and I dug up part of our garden over the weekend, and, we looked at pictures when it first started growing, little seedlings. You're like so excited. Oh, am I going to get tomatoes from that? Maybe not. And then it passes away, the arising and passing away of all phenomena. It just reiterates, it deepens the truth so that we can develop this continual, stable awareness of the truth of impermanence, of the truth of death. So one of the last points, Buddha also said we need to distinguish between the establishment of mindfulness and the development of it. He said the establishment of mindfulness is just kind of being aware of the content. My breath. We're kind of focused on the content. And initially, that's important. That's important to break distraction, to break our habitual nature of following all sorts of thoughts. That we establish mindfulness by being aware of what's there, mindful of content. He said, but as our practice gets stronger and our mindfulness will naturally develop. So it's a very organic process. As we're committed to our practice and it gets stronger and stronger, and it's continually present in our lives, mindfulness will develop so that we're more aware of the process of change itself. We're mindful of process. And he said, then the awareness of impermanence is more predominant than the object itself. So now we're kicking it up a notch, and we're bringing impermanence deeper into our hearts and deeper into our lives. And it will inform our choices. It will inform our relationships. It will influence our activities. We're not just led by our karmic conditions. We can start to develop karma in a wholesome sort of way. So here's a beautiful saying that I think it was originally from Shohaku Okamura's teacher, whose name is eluding me at this moment, but he said, our Zazen practice and off the cushion practice is opening the clenched fist in our mind, right? Doesn't it sometimes feel this way? So our practice of mindfulness, of awareness, of shamatha, vipassana meditation is opening the clenched fist in our mind so that we're letting go. We're experiencing freedom, liberation. You know how tight a clenched fist is, and then we let go. So there's nothing to do, nothing to be, and nothing to have. Nothing to do, nothing to be, nothing to have. So we understand these paradoxes in Zen practice, right? That we think, well, wait a minute, we just talked about all this stuff to do and to get somewhere. But we're reminded again and again, there's nothing to do, nothing to be, and nothing to have. So I want to read, to close off, a beautiful encouragement to us, because this book is just incredible. Encouraging Words, Zen Buddhist Teachings for Western Students by Robert Aitken. And he said, I feel that the main aim of Buddhism should be to help people to train themselves in their ability to change direction so that they don't think of death as something that comes suddenly at the end of life, as a kind of collapse of the body, but rather that it is in each instant being born into this situation, dying to that situation, being born into the next situation. If you think in those terms about dying, then each of these instants becomes extremely important. And then finally, it's a little story about Yasutani Roshi, who is one of our Soto's ancestors. Yasutani Roshi lived in a series of little rundown houses. He graced with the name Temple. Though he always knew that his stay would be temporary, he would immediately set about repairing faulty doors, broken steps, and the like, swinging his own hammer. We all live in a temporary temple. We honor our heritage by maintaining it as the house of the Buddha. Thank you. So we have about 5 minutes. If there's any thoughts or questions or comments, we can certainly do that. Just unmute yourself if you have a question or comment.
Myogetsu, thank you so much for this wonderful teaching. It's very timely in my life and everyone's. I always find that I get stuck in grasping at the length of impermanence. You know, why does a rock get to live so long, but sentient beings have this improbable length of existence? You know, it's like, oh, we expect humans to live to 80, and then something happens and they're gone. And pets, it's so you get caught in this suffering of, oh, they're gone. And so I find myself just having this, I get to this wonderful wave of, oh, everything's great, everything's, I feel this at one with all impermanence, and then poof, you get this test. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Diane?
Yes, Pam.
With the teaching of impermanence and your analogy with the flower dying, how might Buddhism think about the concept that after the flower dies, it then, there's something that it's giving back to the world. So it is the seeds that are being planted
Mm-hmm.
from the flower, or the well, for example, the seeds that are giving back. And
Right.
the analogy maybe with humans, that when our body dies, we have also left seeds with other people.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
And is that viewed as thinking about the ego, that I'm leaving seeds hopefully with other humans? Or would that be something that Buddhism would see as, I guess, how do you put that together with the impermanence part?
That's a good question. And I guess my immediate thought is, I guess it depends on whether these seeds are coming from ego, that there's something that we're desperate in leaving so that there's a continuation of self, versus leaving seeds of kindness, of the ways in which we've spoken words, in which we have extended compassion and kindness to others, our generosity towards others. You know, it's sort of the difference between wholesome and unwholesome states, isn't it? We know that when we're leaving things that have a kind of a mark of our own identity, it feels more graspy than we're just opening the hand of thought.
Okay, so it's the intent, possibly.
Intent, absolutely. Yeah, good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just a few more minutes if anybody has any other comment or question. The talk's coming to an end, so we can contemplate that it arose and now it's passing away. And will always give us teachings on impermanence, always, always, if we pay attention and we open our eyes and our heart. So thank you all very much. It's always a pleasure to spend time and to share Buddha's teachings. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Diane.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Myogetsu.
Thank you, Diane.